Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa, and I want to welcome you to The Search. If you have been here before, I want to thank you for being a returning viewer and helping us grow our channel. If this is your first time, I upload every Thursday at 8 p.m. and we premiere it so that you can come in and be a part of the watch party. I encourage you to subscribe, put your notification on, and if you like what you see, hit that like button. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday at 8 p.m. Today, guys, we are going to be talking about a missing case. Now, for the people that are new in here, I will let you know if you look at our previous cases on our thumbnails, if you see the search wrote in yellow, that means that it is a missing case. If you see the words the search wrote in red, that means that it is an unsolved murder case. This one will be wrote in yellow because it is a missing unsolved case. Let's get into today's case. Today's case is about Brandon Swanson. He is from Marshall, Minnesota, and his parents are Brian and Annette. He is an only child. He was born January 30th, 1989, in Marshall, Minnesota. The actual incident when this begins is May 14th, 2008. So at the time, he would be 19 years old. I want to let you know a little bit about Brandon. He graduated in 2007 and then he went on to Minnesota West Community College. He wanted to study wind turbines. So I thought that was interesting. I thought it kind of even maybe told a little bit about his character. His friends and people all had generous things, of course, to say about him. He was kind of like a little bit of a shyer guy. He wasn't real just out there in your face, and he had goals. He went right out of school. Like I said, he graduated high school in 2007. 2008, he was in. Like I said, the incident takes place starting on May 14th, 2008, which is the last day of spring semester. And we all know what happens on the last day of our school years, whether it is high school or college. That is a happy day, right? And we know kind of like what we like to do afterwards. So, most of us anyway. I'm going to kind of let you know what Brandon did, how his night kind of took off after finals and just like, we're done, right? He decides that night before he goes on back home that he was going to go and just kind of they had like some parties going on in restaurants. It was like a little town. You could pop in places and everybody's kind of saying bye. People are going back home. Even though this wasn't a university, there was like other places that were also meeting up there. And this was a pretty decent sized school. What I mean by not university, meaning a lot weren't traveling far back home. They weren't going to be there during the summer, and they were used to seeing each other every day. So it was kind of like a celebratory kind of night. Like we did it, we accomplished our whatever year everybody was in, first or second. Some were graduating, right? So anyway, that's kind of the scene that it was that night. So he goes and he stops in a couple places and he did have a couple drinks. But his friends definitely said, and the people around said, he just had like a drink or two. It was more or less hanging out, kind of like finishing off, putting a closure to the year. Definitely not drunk, not making any kind of scenes or just standing out or anything. Like I said, just a little social drink, which I definitely agree, social or not, you should not be driving. Now, this is 2008, not making any excuses for that. But like where I said, there wasn't like Ubers out or anything like that or taxis. But again, he felt he was fine with only a little social drink. That was for him to decide. And people around him, like I said, agreed that they felt he was totally fine. After he leaves the kind of the bar areas, he does swing over to one last classmate, and he does have a shot over there. But those people also said that he was fine. He hung out at the last place he was to say goodbye to a classmate that he was a little closer to. That was a little after midnight. After that, he was ready to head back home to Marshall. Now, Canby is about 35 miles from his house in Marshall, but he took that normal route daily. I mean, he knew it. Like I said, he traveled a little bit, but it wasn't like a long period. But 35 miles is still 35 miles. It was the same route that he was very familiar with. It was the same route along Minnesota State Highway 68 that he had taken every day. He knew it. But for some reason, Brandon avoided that highway and took the back roads. Did he take the back roads because maybe he felt he was fine to drive, but he knew he'd had some drinks and didn't want to get pulled over? That's a theory of why would he take the back roads when he took the same roads every day and knew the daily routine, right? Maybe that was a thought. Maybe he felt okay, but hey, if there was any roadblocks, if I get pulled over, I still have alcohol on my breath. That's really the only thing we can think why that time at night people were thinking that he would do that. When he reached the 3900 block of Lion Lincoln Road, Brand suddenly swerved off the road into a ditch. At around 2 a.m. in the morning on May 14th, Swanson called his parents. Now this is after midnight, so now we're to May 14th. When I say May 14th, simply because it's just a couple hours after midnight. I just always want to make sure that people are clear on that. Because sometimes I get myself confused getting with the dates and stuff. I'm just being honest with you. I try to learn these cases as much as possible, but I always want to make sure I'm correct with all the dates and everything. Just to be clear, it's only a couple hours after midnight, so now we are into May 14th. Swanson calls his parents on the cell phone and tells them, look, I ran off the road. I'm okay. Like, he really stresses that he's okay. That what's happened though is the car is in the ditch and it's like the wheels are off the ground. He's like, he can't get it out of the ditch on his own. He didn't say kind of how it happened. He just kind of swerved, and at one time he's talked about gravel. I don't know if he like was going to miss a turn or something. We don't exactly know. He ends up in the ditch and he is like, I need y'all to come get me. He tells his parents that he believed to be near the city of Lynd, Lynd, and that the lights he spotted off the distance were coming from there. That's kind of where he felt he was at. Because you remember, he didn't take his normal route. He wasn't as familiar where he was. So he's like telling his parents, this is like kind of where I'm at. I'm seeing the lights. That's the city of Lynd. They drove out there looking for them. Both the Swanson parents agreed to flash their headlights on and off in order to signal for each other. They're leaving the house. He's telling them where they're going and he's trying to direct them, like go towards this area. They know where Lynd's at. You got to remember, it's not a huge mileage like around them. Like, we're talking, like I said, it was a 35 miles from coming from school to home. You're taking the back roads. It's not like so crazy far out of the way that you feel like with enough being around, they're locals of there. They're locals of this area. They're like, okay, normal parents, just we're gonna flash our lights because it is at night. Just like that way, when he would like see a car or something coming, maybe he would flash the lights, or even because it was so dark at night, and they would stay on the phone. Now, the phone would, because they're in the back roads, they're in the cut, as we would say, they would lose signal and it would drop. Phones were also different back in 2008. Remember that. They would lose signal, pick it back up, call again, right? But they kept doing it. They're getting a little frustrated. He's getting frustrated. Remember now, about 45 minutes have gone by. It's only 35 minutes from there to home. So something is not jiving. Something's not riding right. Somebody's not saying the right areas. The parents are obviously not in the right area. And I can imagine the start of the panic. But I think that sometimes we've all been, not all, but a lot of us have been in situations where we've had to go pick somebody up that's ran out of gas or broke down or an accident, anything. And you kind of feel like, all right, where you're at, and then you find them. We take so for granted GPSs and everything and how we just can find and connect our phones. But like I said, we need to go back to 2008 and we're on dark roads at night trying to find our only son. And as a mom myself, I can imagine I would start getting a little worried, like, where is he? But we know that he's okay. After about 45 minutes, finally, Swanson decides he's going to take a different course of action. He starts walking through a field in the direction of the lights, and he asked his parents to meet him at the parking lot of a nightclub in Lind. Remember, he had said at the beginning that he was looking like he could see lights above, probably within like 7 miles. So he's thinking that that's where he's looking at, and that, all right, look, y'all ain't finding me. It's been 45 minutes. We're obviously not on the same path. I'm going to start walking there. Just meet me in a bar parking lot up there. So that's in his mind, that's what he's going to do. Start walking. 47 minutes into the call, Swanson suddenly says, "Oh shit." There was silence. The call didn't end at that point, though. There was just silence as Brian and Annette waited, agony, just waited. What is going on? You hear him say, "Oh," then you don't hear anything else. So they waited for their son to tell them what was wrong, but he never did. Unsure what else to do, they hung up and tried calling him again multiple times, each time getting no response. Remember, they had gone through this though, like dropping calls, picking back up, calling. There's still like this hope of like, what happened? Maybe he like dropped his phone, maybe anything. When he said, "Oh shit," it didn't hang up right away. They didn't hear really anything either. Brandon wasn't picking up the phone though when they started calling back. Brian and Annette, of course, go up to this bar. They go around, they're sitting there looking, driving around the area. Nothing. They don't see him. They've done all this looking, this searching, waiting, calling, anything. Nothing. Nothing. So now they know this is serious, and we've got to find them. At 6:30 that morning, they called the local police. Initially, this part, and I will discuss even further later, is one of the reasons I wanted to do this story. Initially, they didn't take the concern seriously. Quote, they stated it wasn't at all unusual for a young man his age to stay out all night. True, because he is 19. Deputies advised them to just be patient and wait to return on his own. But, you know what the parents heard what I'm saying? Quote, it is his right to be missing. See, when people are 19, they're considered an adult. But us as parents, we know when something isn't right. We know. We don't need to hear what rights they have at 19. We know when something's wrong, and there's a reason we're there. This is what gets me fired up. Fired up. And comments like that when I'm a concerned family, my only child that we've been trying to find and come pick up because we knew that he broke down on the side of the road in a ditch. And you're telling me he has the right to go missing? Mm-mm. No. In the meantime, the parents were told he has the right to be missing. They continue looking around, letting people know. They do the report. They did still take the report. They just didn't jump on it as soon as they should have. Not immediately. they gave it a little bit of time. The police did. While they're waiting to give it time for him to come back home or to contact, the family is looking. People are now finding out. They're starting to like let people know. With friends, they're calling and saying, listen, he didn't come home. So it's starting to get out. I believe I want to say closer to that evening. That's when the police are like, okay, we're understanding that this is something going on. They understand now more about with the car and the calling. So they've realized likely we need to start jumping on this. And like I said, they did take the report, but they didn't jump on it immediately. When the police obtained Brandon's cell phone records, they were able to get his records. They discovered that on the night that he disappeared, he had actually been near Porter, which is roughly 25 miles away from where he told his parents he was. So shortly thereafter, his car was located in the ditch near Taunton. Lyons County Sheriff Eric Wallen said that Brandon's phone was working well into the next day and that the officers continued to try calling it and getting his voicemail. Like I said, they didn't jump on it right away, but they had the report, and as the day went on, they did go ahead and put in for his phone records to help maybe, to ping things. That is how they were able to know that the phone was still working. It was functioning. It says we were able to use the cell phone tower technology to have an idea of where his last communications or phone calls came from. So this is coming from Sheriff Eric Wallen. His last communications or phone calls came from, so that put us on the cell tower in that area. The search was focused there and the car was located. So that is how this starts finding where to search at. Once they got the phone records and pinged it, that's where they started to look at. Had they been where they were told, they would have been in the wrong area. But still, the time is at the essence when someone is missing. When they get to the car, the keys weren't found on the scene and there was no obvious signs of foul play. The vehicle, it looked like it was just stuck in a ditch. And the wheels, like I said before, were kind of up, which is what he had said. He was fine. He just went in the ditch and he was stuck in there. There really wasn't anything odd about it. If a person passed by, they would just think the car broke down, stuck, whatever. Once the full search of finally did begin, it was an extensive one. It included hundreds of volunteers, trained search dogs. They had helicopters, like air surveillances. The whole search covered both the land and the Yellow Medicine River. As some of the search and rescue personnel speculated that Swanson could have fallen in the current and drowned. Now, that was just a speculation. They're trying to think of all things. The one thing that Brandon did say when he was talking was, he said, when he was talking about his surroundings, he talked about fences, like he was passing fences, that he could feel the gravel, there was gravelness. He mentioned that he could hear water. That's what they're thinking about in Yellow Medicine County. The search dogs also, guys, they picked up the scent of human remains a few times near Mud Creek, north of Porter. However, nothing pertinent to the case was ever recovered there. So Sheriff Wallen said that the investigation also had done extensive excavation work on the river, meaning look around with they go with their meters, all their detectors. They go in looking around. The canines teams picked up Brandon's scent on a piece of farm equipment nearby, but the farmer to whom it belonged to refused to let authorities search the property. Why? At this point, Ken Anderson of the Emergency Support Services realized that several promising areas couldn't be searched because of variety thorny legal conflicts revolving around landowners' permissions, local cattle farmers for example, didn't want police search dogs on their property. What if it was their child? I'm just putting it out there. I know people have reasons for things, but if your child was missing, wouldn't you want people to be able to allow on your land? Are you that worried that the dog is going to do something? I don't know all the details of why. If there's nothing to hide, you don't want the animals in your on your farm. I mean, I'm sure there may be some reasoning, but I always say put yourself in parents' shoes. And us as humans, we should want to go the extra mile. Hey, you want to look in my backyard? You want to look around? That's fine. I know people are worried so much about lawsuits and being wrongly accused. I understand it can be scary. But look, all that farm, he was walking, he was lost. Let us look. It was, I believe, 39 degrees, if I'm not mistaken, that night. They even talked about getting like hypothermia. Yellow Medicine County Sheriff Bill Flatten worked on emergency support services on requesting the landowner's permission, helping to create an access schedule for the farmland now so that the investigators and the search teams could work around the planting and harvest season, because those were some of the concerns of when they were planting, harvesting, and then of course the dogs all running through. I understand that, but we have a human life that's missing. Sheriff Bill Flatten was definitely doing everything he could to get on there. The problem, he said, usually arises when law enforcement doesn't have probable cause, although most property owners try to be accommodating. There's always that one, right? They know their property and they search it and look around as well. Another facet to the complication, according to the Sheriff Anderson, has been that specialized canine scent work is precious and time sensitive resource. In the whole state of Minnesota, there has been no more than 3 dogs available at any given time with the capability for like this kind of search. The problem is that the time goes on, it becomes much more complicated to do the full duty of the search of what the dogs are expected of. You need to have like canine experience and age scent. As the time goes on, it gets harder and harder. The tools that you need, and when I say tools, I mean all the rescuing tools, using the helicopters, people, out there volunteering their time, the dogs, like I said, working with dogs on age sense, all the things that they use, boats, scouting out rivers, lakes, everything. Time is so sensitive. I talked about earlier that Brandon, great kid, he did deal with having one eye, he was legally blind. It is important to note that due to the childhood eye injury leading him to have depth perception issues, which could explain the turning too early, getting into the ditch, that could also be part of it. But he had to wear his glasses. For some reason, on that night, he left his glasses in the car, which is kind of weird because he needs them at all times, especially when he's in an unknown territory at night. Why didn't he take his glasses? That kind of bothered me a little bit. There were a lot of unmarked areas, and authorities had considered the possibility that Brandon Light could have fallen into one. So it was just under 40 degrees that night. Like I said, I told you about hypothermia. Despite the fact that he had been drinking that night, his parents were adamant that the son sounded perfectly fine. There was nothing that alarmed them. They know his tone, they know his ways. He was fine. There was no issue of him being confused. It was just like they almost were feeling like each other were confused. Needless to say, that night was the last night that the parents ever heard from him. There was a lot of searches done. The sheriffs trying to get on properties that were big farms so they could go through there, maybe and walk through. They had boats in the rivers looking that possibly fallen in there and accidentally drowned. Dogs, lots of people looking. It went on and on. They continued over and over for many years, taking in tips in different leads. Nothing. They even said, even up to 2023, they were getting tips. But to be honest with you, a lot of the tips were all dead end. They were dead end tips. There was nothing. They would get the same tips over and over and over. But they've checked out everything and he has simply disappeared. The one thing that I want to talk about that made me want to tell this story. This is why we have to bring awareness not only to help find our people that are missing, but we need to see, one, what can we do better in these cases when they happen, because unfortunately they happen a lot. What could we have done different in these investigations? What could prevent this from happening? Technology has gotten a lot better as far as putting the finders on the phones, GPSs, how they can find you. That is where technology has helped us. What can we do as people? Because technology can always go out, or like I said, we don't find the phones, something doesn't work, you're not able to ping. We still need to go back to the beginning where we depend on each other, where we look to our neighbor to help, what we can do, how we can do it when we have no tools available. Brian and Annette, going through all this, have definitely done something to make a difference due to their son's case. Knowing firsthand how crucial it is. When someone goes missing, time is everything. Timing is everything, guys. In a missing person's case, to start investigating as soon as possible, they wanted to spare other families from having to deal with this nightmare. They became advocates and lobbied for the passing of what would become known as Brandon's Law, which requires law enforcement to immediately begin a preliminary investigation when an adult goes missing under dangerous circumstances, regardless of their age. The bill was signed by Governor Tim Pawlenty on May 7th of 2009 and went into effect on July 1st that same year. Even though we still have not found out where Brandon is, we now can prevent another 19-year-old or someone over 18. See, when they're under 18, they get a BOLO out, an Amber Alert out, and we're glad, we're thankful. Unfortunately, what happens is, as you become an adult, you hear they have the right to be missing. And that's true. But when I come to you and I tell you, my son called us, he was broke down, we lost connection, he's on a back road, now there's no connection, we cannot find him. These are what's happening. 6:30 in the morning now. He was in the back roads. He's not hanging at a buddy's house. We need help right then. This wasn't just hey, I talked to my son last night and I called him for breakfast and he didn't answer. I get that. But this was different. They came in already saying there's been danger since after midnight last night. And we've been working through the night and now we're coming to you. That's where it went wrong at the beginning. Time was everything. Although we still don't know where he is, we will continue to pray. Hopefully somebody will hear this. Maybe somebody was out in the woods, thought they saw something, assumed it was something else. It is 2023 now. It's been a long time. He went missing in 2008. I always say, one of my sayings are, somebody knows something. And people just don't disappear. The only logical theory is that he did fall in the river. They just weren't able to find him in there. Other than that, I don't know why all these years of looking and they were like pinging down to the spots. How far could he have walked if he didn't make it to where he thought he was going? We're only talking 122 square miles of looking. Now, I know, sounds like a lot, but with helicopters, dogs, people, something. We have this law now, so if this happens from that forward, because it was July of 2009, if you had emergency case and that happened, you make sure that you got down there. Hopefully it has stopped others from going missing for so long and they were found. It saved people and continues to save people. Brandon is still doing good things, and his parents did a great thing to prevent this happening to another family. What I like to do in every case that I end is I like to take a ribbon. I like to put their name on a prayer ribbon in honor of them for their family. He's 19 and in prayer and hopes that we bring them home. This is Brandon Swanson, last seen May 14th, 2008. And I want to end with also adding, if anyone with information on Brandon Swanson's disappearance, please call the tip line at 507-694-1664. Again, I want to thank you for watching this episode of Brandon Swanson. I look forward to seeing you all on the next search.